Okay, so in today's commentary, we're going to focus on Jin Myung, novelist and author Jin Myung from Seoul, South Korea, and his works, his historical fictions. I often like to refer to him as the Tom Clancy of Seoul, South Korea. He could because of his ability to tie in history and current debate and current historical facts with interesting conspiracy theories or interesting theories about the reasoning behind some of the phenomena that we see today. Um, the author has a few very representative works, famous works. The first is his 무궁화 꽃이 피었습니다. So this is the book's entitled The Blooming of the National Flower. The book was published in 1993. 고구려, which was published 2011. And Thad, which is in 2014. Now, I first came across this author was in 2014, and the Thad book is, if you can read Korean, it's easier to get through than some of his other books, which deal with history, which deal with very difficult vocabulary. So if your Korean is if you're up to the challenge, I would recommend Thad as a good testing waters for reading Korean novels because, it wasn't that bad to get through. Most of his books do focus around Korea, obviously, but also the idea or the question about nuclear, like a nuclear power Korea, denuclearization, and the issues surrounding nuclear power in North Korea. And Thad is a great book to get started with. It also deals with current ongoing events, and it provides insight into, and this is the main reason we wanted to provide commentary on Jin Myung, was because of his media presence. His books are tremendously influential in South Korea. And so to understand his insight and his perspective can also give us some insight and perspective into how maybe some of the current issues in the Korean Peninsula are not being looked at in the proper light or perspective. And so it is always excellent when you get a chance to come across some of his commentary, to at least listen to it and absorb it a little bit. You don't have to agree with it, but at least to come in contact with it is important. He also has two more recent books published this past December. The book was entitled 미중 정쟁, a two-part series, and also most recently the Yeon, Yeon, yeah, right, Yeon for prediction. I haven't read Yeon, but U.S.-China war, the Chinese-American war, we're talking about the coming of it. It does take its bit derived from Thad, the book. Again, in this first part, we're just going to focus on some of the more important insights he has to the current situation in Korea.
더 위험한 것은 뭐냐면은 중국이거든요.
All right, so in this next clip, what we're looking at is the author has just explained sort of the dangers of the United States interests. But in this clip, he's talking about why China is much more dangerous than the United States. And he goes into the economic reasons. He goes into reasons where the Chinese are trying to prevent any democratic movements from affecting their system, from influencing their form and their way of life and government.
남한, 북한, 미국이 잘 합의를 한다. 그래서 핵을 포기하고 종전 협정을 하고 제재를 푼다. 그러나 한국 기업이 그 투자하겠습니까?
Right, and he continues. He goes, we have denuclearization, and then an agreement to end the Korean War, right, and then we remove sanctions. What South Korean business is not going to invest in North Korea, and the international community is going to want to invest, and so if this process is successful, now I know this is what many people think the pipe dream. It's not possible. It's just too much. It's a long shot. It's not even worth thinking about. But he's saying even if this happens, and there's all of this investment or interest that want to invest in North Korea, he starts to lay out sort of the problems that will come about. And one of the first problems he points to is the big punishment South Korean businesses felt, especially small to middle South Korean businesses that invested in the Kaesong factory, right? The joint economic integration, sort of the first step towards this, and how those small to medium-sized business were severely punished when there was the eventual shutdown of the Kaesong factory, right? And so he speaks to that, and then he's going to go into talking about the non-democratic states that surround China and protect China, and why it's important for China to protect itself from any types of democratic movement or democratic states in order to preserve its one-party, authoritarian, non-democratic system.
지난 6, 70년간의 경험으로 봐가지고 정부가 개런티하는 개성공단에 들어간 조그만 기업들도 그 낭패를 보는데
지금까지의 경험은 그거였죠.
그렇습니다. 거대 기업이 북한에 들어간다는 생각도 할 수가 없고요. 게다가 그 정부가 북한에 얼마를 지원하겠다. 그것이 그 국회에서 쉽게 통과가 되겠습니까? 액수가 어떻고 뭐 티격태격하고 그러면 그 빈자리를 누가 들어옵니까? 중국이
중국에서 가겠죠.
중국에게 북한은 이게 그 단순한 투자의 대상이 아니거든요. 중국 지도를 잘 보면은요. 동서남북이 전부 비민주 국가예요.
Right. So here's the map that even they point to in the interview that shows all the countries that border with China that for the most part are non-democratic, right? So these are the non-democratic nations bordering China, and the author goes through why the close relationship between China and North Korea. It's often referred to lips and teeth. He later refers to the relationship in this interview, but he talks about the democratic movement, and a lot of people from recent memory or recent history can think of the 1919 March 1st democratic movement in South Korea that dealt with massive protests across the country to remove the Japanese occupation, or at least to protest the Japanese occupation. And into modern day, you had the Candlelight Revolution. A lot of people look down on the Candlelight Revolution. I'm not sure quite why. I mean, it's a peaceful democratic movement. Yes, maybe your person, your party was removed from power, but in that part of the world and for the world in general, peaceful democratic movements should be supported. That should be what we're for, right? And for this to be happening in Seoul, in South Korea, on the border of North Korea, China, right there, the author is talking about how even in 1919, the March 1st revolutions, also the March 1st movement ended up influencing China 2 months later in May of 1919. And so the movements of Seoul, the movements of South Korea have a democratizing effect on China. And China is looking to block this with all its might. And that's why China will always support North Korea and to prevent any form of democratic movements coming in.
그걸로 삥 둘러싸 있어요. 남북 통일이 되면은 우리 한국은 이 민주주의에 미친 나라거든요. 이 광화문의 촛불이 바로 천안문으로 직수입된다고 보기 때문에 그럼 중국이 가장 무서워하는 거는 공산당의
일당 독재가
붕괴와 멸망이거든요. 중국이 그걸 제일 무서워하기 때문에 죽어도 북한을 양보하지도 않고 죽어도 남북 통일을
Right. So even here, he speaks to the fact that China definitely doesn't want unification between the North and the South, because the likelihood of these democratic forces being unleashed in North Korea and pushing forward into China would be even greater. And so for that reason, and that mostly that reason alone, China looks to block any attempts for unification, any attempts for North Korea to assert itself as an autonomous state. North Korea likes to claim it's an autonomous state, but any attempt towards a closer relationship between North and South Korea and the Chinese government is there to wedge between the two of them.
남북 통일이라는 것, 중국이 공산당 독재라는 것과 시장 경제가 굉장히 위태위태한 동거를 하고 있는데 이 체제에서 공산당의 어떤 그 존립을 위협할 수 있는 민주주의가 직수입되는 통로가 된다. 이 점을 굉장히 두려워하고 있다는 말씀이시군요.
과거에도 보면은 이제 우리나라가 1919년에 3.1운동 일어나지 않았습니까? 그 다음에 이제 천두슈 이런 개혁적인 사람들이 오사운동을 일으키거든요. 3.1운동을 그대로 본다는 거예요.
그때도 중국이 수입을 해갔다는 거죠.
그럼요.
3.1운동.
그럼요. 그래서 중국이 순망치한 할 때에 왜 순망치한이라는 말을 쓰느냐. 순망치한이라는 것은
네.
한국의 민주화가 들어오는 거를 북한이 막아주는 입술이다 이거예요.
Right, so here he says that Sungmang Chian, Sajosangho, speaking to North Korea equals the lips that block Korean democratization. Says it right there, right? So the democratic movement in the South, democratic movement of the Korean people is blocked by the lips, by North Korea. That's North Korea's role, is to block any types of democratic movement that are pushing into China. And it's been going on this way for 100 years or more, right? And he cites the 1919 March 1st movement that started in Seoul, and then, or at least all across the peninsula, and then pushed into China on May 4th of 1919. And then he speaks to it again. China's biggest fear is the collapse of its one-party system. One-party system, even with their allowance for certain types of market economics, certain types of market forces in the Chinese system. But at the end of the day, it's one-party system, it's one rule, it's authoritarianism, and democratic movements, peaceful mass democratic movements, are not wanted at all. And they'll be put down by force if necessary.
그렇기 때문에 자본 논리는 말할 것도 없고 국가 전략 베이스에서 어마어마한 투자를 해서 북한을 먹어버리게 돼 있는 거죠. 이대로 그냥 가면은 바로 중국의 품에 북한을 밀어주는 꼴밖에 안 되죠. 그런 것도 우리가 다 생각을 해야 된다는 뜻입니다.
Right, so in this last clip, what he's talking about is even with the end of the Korean War, North Korea, there's a very real, very dangerous scenario where North Korea is absorbed by China through massive amounts of investment, and China goes into the embrace, or North Korea goes into the embrace of China, is pushed into the embrace of China. And this is a very real, dangerous, and a very big threat, more so than the United States.
그러니까 우리가 정말 지금 모든 게 잘 될 거야라는 낙관주의는 잠깐 밀어두고 우리가 닥칠 수도 있는 논리적인 시나리오를 잘 예상해서 치밀하게 대응을 해야 되겠군요.
그렇습니다. 중국이 북한을 접수하게 되면은요, 오히려 남북 간의 분쟁이 핵무기가 있을 때보다도 더 심해질 수 있습니다. 전쟁이라는 게 뭡니까? 전쟁은 경제학적으로 얘기하면은 짧은 시간에 큰 돈을 쏟아붓는 걸 얘기하잖아요. 그렇죠. 북한이 도발을 하지 않는 거는 돈이 없기 때문이거든요. 그래서 중국이 뒤를 받치면 돈이 엄청나게 많아지지 않습니까? 그러면은 중국과 미국의 대결, 중국, 러시아와 미국의 대결, 이런 상황이 될 때에 그 북한이 중국이 돈으로 이렇게 장악하고 있으면은 나쁜 쪽으로, 우리에게 나쁜 쪽으로 작용 안 한다.
All right, so in this last portion, the author speaks to the very real danger of a confrontation between U.S. and China, or China, Russia, and the U.S., and the use of North Korea, right? China absorbs North Korea through investment. China uses North Korea, and there's a very real danger, that things become much worse between North and South Korea, right? So North chooses China, or the North aligned with China attacks the South, possibly, right? So the very real danger that even after the pronouncement of the end of the Korean War, if North Korea goes even further into the embrace of China through investment, through absorption, then there's a very real danger that relations between the North and the South become even worse. And that is it for today. Thank you for tuning in. We'll try to do commentary pieces with Kim Jin Myung all week. But he's a really great author. And for those of you interested in North and South Korea, those interested in the Korean Peninsula, I would always recommend reading fiction as well. Right? If you're reading popular fiction or fiction during that time period, it allows you to have a better understanding of the the interest groups, the different narratives that are going on in the imagination of the population, and it's just very useful. And it improves your Korean, I guess. But no, it's very useful. It provides useful insights, and I would recommend following or reading any of Jin Myung's books. So thank you. See you again. Bye.